a perimeter of the infestation, you can't get rid of it. There are really good mature treatments that can be put in place to get rid of the fire ant infestation. This is definitely one of the species that you want to get rid of, that you want to be vigilant about monitoring to make sure it's absolutely gone, and that you want to share with your community and your neighbors because they don't want it either. We're talking about not being able to pick fruits from your trees or flowers, about having to monitor your property constantly, and about being stung and your family being stung. I've met with farmers on the Big Island who have to deal with this now regularly, who have said it feels like a bee sting. And we're talking about ants that can swarm and shower down onto you and bite multiple times. So it's just a really bad situation. So we're trying to get the word out. We're trying to answer everyone's questions. We're trying to explain why this is so important and why you should care. And we're asking for your help to get the word out and then to support us in efforts to make sure that we're changing what needs to be changed to respond to this now and in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. My neighboring representative, Lisa Martin, who has been real boots on the ground fighting this issue in Manikai and Wanamalu.
Hi, welcome to So yes, this whoever is watching online and everybody here, I know that we're preaching to the choir in this room, a lot of people that are actually already engaged in this issue. But what I've learned from having this infestation in my district is that we need the help of our neighbors. Basically, as much as they would like to, it's impossible for Hawaii Ant Lab to reach out to all of the different people to know their contact information, find them at home. We have, people that work, people that are traveling, vacant properties, vacation rentals, all kinds of situations. And the only people that can help us get their contact and get access to those properties to survey them, to treat them, is the people that live in them. And so we really need them. And we spent Saturday in Lanikai visiting more than 100 properties, found many new infestations. We have this problem. It's here. And the beautiful thing with the little fire ants is what Senator Pioli mentioned is that we have good treatment. It really works. And so it's worthwhile to root it out. We all have to survey at the same time. We all have to treat together at the same time to get rid of it. And then we have to take preventive measures for coconut rhinoceros beetle, which fortunately is not so prevalent on our side of the island, but that is going to change. My understanding is they actually like wetter weather better. It's a terrible problem on the west side. Once they get to our nice moist weather over here, they're going to love it even more. So we really need to manage our mulch, manage our waste to keep that problem under control until we can figure out the treatment. We do not have yet. And the cookie frogs, their Waimanala went from 1 valley to 3 valleys. The Department of Agriculture has been working on it now for a couple of years. And we have some new strategies that hopefully will work better, but so far what we have been doing hasn't worked. It's a really tough area. I slid down the mountain, so it's nothing to stop it, to break my fall. It's a really tough area to access. But I think now with more resources, hopefully we'll do that. But all of these things require, I feel like Harry Potter, but constant vigilance, right? So in terms of when you buy something, when someone gives you something, check it out, right? That's the only way that we can help prevent this crime. So thank you all for hearing, for showing up. And also, thank you so much to my office manager and your daughter.
I really want to bring this issue home to you by bringing up a dear friend of mine who was actually born and raised in Kailua. Some of you may know him, Devin Green, and he now lives on the Big Island. So I just wanted to tell a quick little bit about how little fire ants has affected his life over on the Big Island.
Yeah, I just feel like down the road, like ended up moving to the Big Island in Mountain View, and the problem there is just severe. Almost every night we get hit by a fire ant. It's just a regular occurrence. It wakes you up and it's itchy for an hour and a half. And it's just all over the place. There's only so much that we've done. And working as a community, like you've all said, is important because once you treat they'll just move over to your neighbor's house and just keep losing and losing.
Yeah, they come bite him in his bed because they're seeking heat. Can you click next on the screen children? I also want to share a little story about an attack on a dog right up the street. Does anybody live behind Safeway on that Aloha Street housing complex? This was in July 2023, and I apologize you can't really see in the room so well because of the light. But this dog is a friend of mine's dog and has all kind of bites here around its mouth and around its eyes. Next. And I wanted to give you a close-up zoom, but this could have blinded this poor dog. This is what's called cloudy eye, aka fire ant eye. And it blinds our cats and dogs in our houses, in our yards. So I really just wanted to make that context. We're talking about a world where we will no longer be able to put our feet out on blankets on the beach or in the park. We will no longer be able to pick flowers for lei and give to friends and family. And if we don't stop coconut rhinoceros beetles, we will not have any more coconut trees in Hawaii. So with that, I would love to bring up our resident experts, Christy Martin from the Coordinating Group for Alien Pest Species. Welcome and thank you so much for being here.
Here, and then we're going to ask you to take home one of these kits, and it will have everything you need in here, peanut butter or mayonnaise, and you'll be able to use your kit to go and do the same thing. Let ants mail them in, and you'll be able to identify them. So what we're going to do is we have the Oahu Invasive Species Committee here at OIS, and they have some supplies. We're going to just use some coffee stir stick. We're going to just very barely dip it into the peanut butter. Now, this is just an attractant. Ants love fat and sugar together, and that's what peanut butter is, right? So don't use that super healthy stuff. Use the junk stuff. I know, right? We made the junk. Oh, so this is like organic. But they will like this too. If you're allergic to peanuts, it's okay. You can use the mayonnaise and use the full fat mayonnaise to Miracle Whip doesn't work quite as well because it's got a lot of the vinegar in it. But use what you can if it has fat or it has sugar in it together. Just put a little bit on your stick, just one side. And the other side is where you're going to hold it. More peanut butter, more mayonnaise, not better. The ants will just roll in it and you won't be able to identify them. We won't be able to identify them. You'll be fine. We're just going to mail it to us. So you're going to come up. You're going to get 1 or 2 sticks. You're going to dip it, wipe off most of it, and then we're going to go find just a place right here off the pavement is fine. When you're at your home doing this, you want to put it near your garbage can. You want to put it near the pet dish. You want to put it in the bushes. If you have new plants, you want to put one there. And then you're going to leave it for a half hour. Plenty of time for the ants to come to your picnic. And you're going to go and, I don't know, wash dishes for a while, do laundry. So as we're setting these out, we're going to set it just down on the ground. Don't plant it like a flag. But we do have flags for you to mark where you put it because it's dark out, right? So just plant your flag right by it. And then come back and sit down. And then we'll talk a little bit more about how to do this.
So everybody's gonna, even if you do it during the day, but it's late, put something there to mark it. You think you'll find it, but
These were just like the garbage on my ground, all the sticks that you could normally rake out, so I don't find these. So yeah, just a little piece of something, either your slipper, whatever. So go ahead and pick up 2 of these sticks, dip it in a little bit, take a flag, place it, and come back, sit down. We'll talk fire ants and why they're so I'll give these to you. You're sitting front row. Go, you want to dip the other one? Just a little bit in there.
So everybody, you can do this at home as well if you like. Just grab a little piece of peanut butter on either a stick, a chopstick, a fork, whatever you like.
There you go. And then go sit in the grass. So we're gonna collect ants right now. Right now. Yeah. We're gonna practice. Yes.
Online, if you can just type your questions, any questions you have into the chat. We'll do Q&A at the end, and we'll ask them of all the experts.
Okay, while the ants are being drawn to your peanut butter sticks or mayonnaise sticks, I'm going to give just a little overview about why fire ants are so bad, why little fire ants in particular are so bad. So they are new. Anybody that grew up in Hawaii remembers little fire ants, or actually fire ants. You went and stood in the wrong spot in the park and they crawled out of this hole in the ground and they crawled and they stung you. Those are not little fire ants. No, those are tropical fire ants, and they're really kind of big. You know, you can look down and you can see them. Kind of large ants. They sting, they're really painful. No doubt about it. Those are not what we're talking about. I know. These are new. They were introduced accidentally to the Big Island, first discovered in 1999, so fairly recently for those of us that are older. And they behave differently than the fire ants we're used to. The fire ants were used to nest in the ground. You can follow their line to a hole. That's where their queen is. Little fire ants don't do that. They have multiple queens. They nest anywhere. Ground, leaf litter, behind the bark of a tree, all the way up to the treetop. So they're very, very different. They can form really big colonies. And I'll get to that in just a moment. So just a quick little summary. Top picture is tropical fire ants. Little fire ants are really much smaller. And if you've ever looked at a penny and seen how thick a penny is, just laying it down on the table, how thick a penny is, that's how long a little fire ant is. 2 millimeters. Very, very small. Whereas a tropical fire ant, you look down, you can clearly see it's an ant. Next. Tropical fire ants, again, you can see them, they nest on the ground. Makes controlling them easy. You find their nest, you put a little bit of granules down by the nest. The ants will take the granules, or they will suck the liquid out of the granules and take that back to the queen, and that solves the problem. The thing about ants is that it's all about the queen. As long as you control the queen, you don't have an ant problem anymore. And so when you use a can of Raid, you're getting rid of the only tool you have to get the queen. You need that worker ant to take your poison back to the queen. Next. So little fire ants nest anywhere. And here's my diagram. You can't see the little red circles, but they're everywhere, all over the trees. And that means you have a three-dimensional infestation. And the numbers of little fire ants, because they're all related to each other, they're all just like cousins. They don't compete with each other. That means they can nest right next to each other. If a colony gets too crowded, new queen just gets up, takes a few workers, and walks a few feet and makes a new colony. And then you can have such huge numbers of fire ants that way. Now that also makes it good for us, because these ants are not flying to a new place to make a new colony. They're walking. And that means their natural spread, the colony spread, is not that quick, unless we pick up that colony and we take it to a new place. And we do this when we pick up potted plants that have a colony in it and move it, or we move it to different islands. So we have to be really vigilant about what we're moving around, what we're receiving from people, because they may have little fire ants. Okay, next. They can get to 80 million ants per acre. So super high densities of ants, like no other ant you've ever experienced, because they're all related and they don't compete with each other. And we don't have any really effective natural predators of ants. And we're not importing ants. So super high density. They have a lot of queens, so you have to kill each and every one of these 228,000 queens in every single acre. That's 45 queens per square yard. So that means that whatever we do has to get each and every one of those if you hope to control the ant population in your community. No wonder it's difficult, right? So they live in trees, leaf litter, on the ground, and when a place gets infested, it's impossible to avoid getting stung like you would. I'm glad you put the photos of the animals there, because that is one of the most heartbreaking aspects of this ant. Yes, it's hard on us, but the animals that can't move away, they can't rub their eyes. The ants are just out there looking for protein. That's your cat, that's your dog. And they're just stinging the spot that is the least protected. So the eyes, the soft tissue. And that's also what's going on with the birds out there. The birds are being affected. In an area that's infested with little fire ants, you can't find other ant species. You can't find insects because they're out there constantly stinging and collecting protein to bring back to the queen. So when you talk about a full impact pest, public health, ecological health, economic health, that's little fire ant. That's why we're so concerned. They also promote sap-sucking insects. So we have like aphids and mealybugs. Little fire ants will actually pick them up and put them onto the fresh leaves of your plants. And they will drink out the honeydew. When that aphid sucks the juices out of your plants, there's honeydew out the bag, and the ants love that. So they actively make plants sicker by moving these bugs around. Coffee is being particularly impacted because they can't control the ants, and then they can't control the pests that the ants move around. So pretty tremendous. And you can't pay people enough to pick this in an infested group. So it harms all of this. In summary, I should have just put the slide up first. Go ahead. So I mentioned this before. All is not lost because we have the tools and the knowledge to be able to control and even eradicate little fire ants. It's not that hard. In fact, Maui Invasive Species Committee, always counterpart of Maui, just conducted an eradication across 175 acres of forest from above Hana Highway and Nihiku all the way down to the coast. The ants had rafted in the stream and infested this forest. But they used a helicopter and some of the baits delivered. And in those baits are the insect growth regulators. So the ants workers come out. This is the foraging workers outside of the colony. They're going and looking for food. What they do is they come into the colony and they feed the nursery workers and other workers. If these nursery and other workers survive and everything's fine, they will feed the queen's attendants. And if the queen's attendants are fine, then they feed the queen. So you can't just give them strong pesticides. It doesn't work. That's why they've existed on this planet for 200 million years. Because the colony, the way they protect the queen is so good. So that's why the Hawaii Ant Lab, who couldn't be here this evening, they're busy killing ants, literally. They've developed slow-acting insecticide that the workers have to come and over time feed it to the queen and then eventually get a dose that will kill the what the Maui Invasive Species Committee used, they had to sprinkle stuff in the trees to get the workers up there. They use an insect growth regulator. What that did is they fed the queen and it was like a birth control for the queen. She stopped producing the young. The young wouldn't grow up and develop, so she eventually starved because there were no more workers to go out and feed her. It works. And we can do it too. But we have to find them first, right? If we don't know where they are, we cannot apply these tools to where the ants are out and foraging. You actually have to put them where it's going to be found by an ant. That's why we need to go to each property, have everybody collect ants, send them in. We need to find where they are and where they're not so that we can focus our efforts. So I mentioned this before, there are toxic baits that kill the queen. Lowest toxicity possible because it has to get all the way to the queen. And then the insect growth regulators that affect the ability of the queen to have you. You may have noticed that there's a lot of groups working on this. And so I wanted to share just a little bit about the kuleana of these different groups. Who does what? Who do I call? Depends where you're working. So first of all, the Department of Agriculture, who's in the back here, thanks Jonathan, thanks for being here. They deal with regulations, prevention, and sometimes industry location surveys, so agriculture location surveys. Hawaii Ant Lab, they couldn't be here, but they are the ones doing the research and development for effective control technologies. There was nowhere in the world besides Hawaii were ants in the trees and people were trying to control them. So this is a homegrown, home-developed Hawaii tool. They're the lead on that. They do some outreach and they also lead the Oahu response. Oahu Invasive Species Committee is here. Aaron Bishop is with OIS. They also have a group. They control priority invasives, including little fire ants. They're out there helping to work with coconut frogs. They're out there helping to work on rapid omega death, coconut rhinoceros, myconia. They're working on some of the worst of the worst. They work on private and public properties, so non-businesses typically. Next is Hawaii Invasive Species Council. We have Chelsea, who coordinates Hawaii Invasive. Right in the back. Thanks very much, Chelsea. And this is state-level executive branches. So chair of Department of Land and Natural Resources, chair of Department of Agriculture, Department of Health, Department of Transportation, all at the state level. They do executive level stuff. And they also receive funding through the legislature for competitive funding to support some of these gap building. These are funded by grants. A lot of it is funded by the legislature. These are your tax dollars that pays Aaron, that pays the Hawaii Ant Lab. So, thanks. And then there's CGAPs. We just work where there's a hole. We focus on the gaps and we try to fill them. It could be with communications. It could be with policy. It could be actually doing surveys. We've done a number of surveys before. So that's who your team is, who you will be working with to address your fire problem. And I have one last take home. Here's 3 things. We do nothing else today. Be aware of what you might bring home, right? These can move in anything. They are on the Big Island. They are established. Things could be moving around. We have some places on Oahu that are infested that continue to distribute materials. Be aware. If you get things, set them in a separate area in your driveway, in your garage, wherever. Don't plant them right away. do your test, right? Collect the ants, send them in. Make sure you don't have fire ants in them before you outplant them to your yard. So this is what we call quarantining your items, and it also works for Koki frog. Leave it overnight, listen. If it stays Koki, not a problem here. And then be aware that your neighbors might be bringing these home and planting them and not doing the same things you are. So be aware that you have to survey your property at least once a year, because your neighbor could have brought something, it could be slowly spreading to your property. We're stuck with this. It's always going to be on the Big Island unless something amazing happens. So we're always going to have to be vigilant. This is part of our lives. So some things you have, if you have not picked up a test kit yet, take one of these home. It's like a gift for coming tonight. There are instructions in here. You tear off this little piece and you fill it out with your name and your address. How do we contact you? Where did you do this collection? You get your coffee stir sticks, you get your bag, and you get your address and stamped envelope for sending in. Now, what we're going to do is, I think staff, we're going to take some time and pick up your kits. You will have a zip top bag. And what you're going to do, what we're going to do, is very carefully on the non-peanut butter ends, pick up your stick and just put it into your zip top bag. You don't need to check to see if there's ants on there, because little fire ants don't hold on very well. And you could like dust them all off while you're putting it in the bag. So just put it straight into the bag. So you're going to do that for all of them. You're going to seal it, follow the directions on your kit. It's going to tell you to freeze it overnight, 24 hours. Don't mail us live ants. You probably won't start a new colony that way, but it's uncomfortable for us. So freeze it overnight, then take it out, just put the whole bag, get the air out, put it into your envelope, put it into the mail. And we'll call you. We will tell you what you have. It may take us a little while to work through your samples. Erin, how many samples have you got back recently?
Past 3 months, we've got about 110 samples back. So
And how many are positive?
10 of them were positive. Most of those positives were coming from areas that we already knew there was a virus station. We found 2 sites. All the rest of the samples were some other kind of ant. We called everybody and said, you have Tetramirmac, or you have a Phalaenopsis. This is how you can get rid of it. You can go to City Mill and buy whatever off the shelf. We let you know. All right. Thank you very much, Chrissy. You did an amazing job of our I actually sent in a test recently, and I was so impressed. It took maybe about a week to get back, which was faster than I thought. I thought we were inundating them with samples. Maybe about a week to get back, and they sent an email listing the 2 different kinds of ants that were in the sample and how they can be treated if you wanted to. So it was really fascinating, super informative, and very quick. Thank you so much for all your work. One moment, and we're going to be bringing up a representative from the Department of Agriculture, Jonathan Ho from the plant quarantine branch. Awesome. And we're going to pull up his PowerPoint on screen. It's in. All right, so John is going to be talking a little bit about Koki frog and coconut rhinoceros beetle, both of which we've seen ravaging the windward side, most especially Koki frog in Waimahalo. And we've definitely heard of, if you follow my Kailua, there's definitely been some posts about coconut rhinoceros beetles being purchased in store-bought soils and compost. So, as always, be vigilant.
Well, I guess while we're waiting, so yeah, my name is Jonathan Ho. I'm the acting manager for the Department of Is that okay? Oh, is it better?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, I'm getting over a sinus infection. Yeah, so I'll be talking a little bit about Koki and CRB, coconut rhinoceros beetle. Yeah, so just real quick for us, our office will respond to any credible Koki report on the island. We this year. I think we've got about 100 this year. And we get them pretty much all across the island. And it's not limited to, nurseries. We also find them in government properties, private residences, retail outlets, and nursery situations. And picture isn't great, but this is a piece of bamboo. There's a male frog here, and the eggs. This was after during one of our responses. Next slide. So, as the representative said, there is a very large population in the back of Waimanalo, and we are working with the Oahu Invasive Species Committee to put in a citric acid pipeline to do ground sprays. We did do a quite large aerial drop of citric acid using a helicopter last summer with unfortunately very limited success. So the cost feasibility wasn't there for that work. So we're going to be using a ground spraying similar to what they do on Maui or so real quickly, I think what you folks can do for koki. Koki is, I think, very different from LFA. Obviously, it tells you it's there. Dusk about midnight, depending on the temperature. It'll be in the same spots. It won't move. A lot of people will, Polea nowadays, you hear them, and they get the trail. But so things that you can do, if you are buying plants particularly, check them for frogs themselves, particularly things that hold water, bromeliads. You can look inside the pots themselves. Christian mentioned that frogs can be there, but you can also have eggs, inside the hole. So take the pot out, what's underneath the rims, things like that. The frogs can kind of be anywhere. You can use citric acid. You can buy it. It is quite a toxic, so it does damage plants. Like LFA, koki doesn't have a particular plant host. You can find it on anything, and we have found it on a number of non-agricultural products, pipes, pallets, boats, porta potties. We caught 6 in Manua Valley on a boat that shaped from Cuba. So anything that comes from a place that has a lot of koki frogs can have koki frogs. So be vigilant. Going back, isolating. Going back to quarantine, keeping the new plants away from other stuff for a few days. Make sure the frogs don't fall and looking for them. 6 would be best. 7378, which you can call. And then one of the good things about technology nowadays is that you can record sounds. We get a lot of reports of people who have koki or believe they have koki, and we car alarms, house alarms, fire alarms, all kinds of stuff. Don't hesitate to take a recording and send it in. Better to be safe than sorry. And again, if we can't determine with you, obviously we can send staff out at night to survey the area. Not the greatest picture, but quarter, and then these two are koki, and then this is a greenhouse frog. I think people probably have seen them in their yards. Small tiny frogs, that's like a cricket. Sounds like a bird chirping at night. They are related, but they are not koki. Anyway, but anyhow, they're quite widespread throughout the state. So for CRB, I'll look at the pictures first. That's great. There's an egg right there. There's the beetle, eggs, quarter, pupa, and all the larvae. And that's a different life stage. So you can see just how small and how large they are. I think generally speaking, for the beetle, about the size of your thumb. The third instar, probably like half a hot dog. Really good. Maybe you're organic, but things that people would recognize, because you have like red flower beetle, which are far small. And that's probably the like you would see. So, CRB primarily attack large leaved palm species, probably primarily coconut, but you have native like Pichardias, so the fan palm species, Worstonia and Phoenix, I believe, but yeah, the larger, and Royal palm. The larger palm species are the ones that are preferred. They do have secondary hosts, but they're generally the palm species are not available, so they're not. Primary movement, obviously, these beetles do fly, so there is natural dispersion. But what we found is that green waste movement, untreated green waste movement, and likely infested potting material of potting mix is kind of the way that it's been moving. Recently, we have found a pretty large infestation of fly, one on Kailua village in the island. It's funny that we're working on these members. Yes, widespread and large. But we're still working on getting treatment methods for homeowners along the. So there is an interim rule that restricts the movement of CRB host material from Oahu to our islands. Working on permanent rulemaking to make those restrictions in perpetuity, and we're going through the rulemaking process now for that. Next slide. And then, so what you can do for CRB, and for Oahu, obviously, it's a little different than on the outer islands, but so pictures quickly. So this is a rather old damaged tree, and what you'll see in the hallmarks are these kind of V-shaped cuts here, 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 and then the holes here. So basically, what the beetles will do is they'll fly and they basically run into the coconut tree that's on the axle, and then basically they chew a hole in it. And the hole that they chew in is what makes these shapes when the frond comes out. So that's how you get that touch. There is.
Which happens.
Yeah, but yeah, for CRB damage, I mean, if you look at it online, it's very obvious. Tree trimming damage can do it if they bury like the machetes in the crowns of the trees, but that's usually a bad tree trim. But it can happen. But you'll see it; it'll come and it'll go. Like this one, you'll either getting damaged. So yeah, so know what the damage is. A lot of times, I think people just they're just not paying attention or whatever. But once you see it, you can't unsee it. It's very, very obvious in the style. If you are planning on moving plants, again, look for this stuff. Again, the holes are good size. I mean, they're very large. If the trees are large, obviously chuck them on the ground. You can further move. Smaller trees are obviously better. If you are planning to move green waste, it's best not to do it. There's a lot of things that move in green waste, LFA included. But if you can, you can put out fine. Like we said, potting mix is unfortunately one of the issues. A lot of the retail establishments do not store this stuff inside. So what's happening is the beetles are flying in and looking for a place to breed, which is potting mix. And they're basically digging their way through the bag. So the bags have a very distinct like stippling from the spikes of their leg. You'll see it quite obviously. But that being said, if you see bags that are damaged, you don't have to worry as much about whether CRB or whether or not. We are working, because of the restrictions to move inter-island, the local producers are treating their products either through steaming or fumigation to ensure they don't have CRB in them. And the retailers are kind of forcing them to treat everything regardless of whether it's on any. But it kind of really depends the biggest flying in. And one of the biggest challenges is the lack of really sufficient treatments. There are some limited ones with peripherins and imidacloprid through as a systemic, but they're relatively slow and not super effective. And then obviously systemic, you can't eat the coconuts. There are some restricted use pesticides, obviously, but private individuals can use them. And then there are some injections that you can do, but which are quite effective, but they're quite expensive, and you're gonna have to do them in perpetuity. In Guam, they have used like fishing nets actually that work relatively well, and you can place them in the crowns of the trees, and basically the beetles, as they fly and they get stuck. The eye that they use for the nets is unfortunately legal in Hawaii. It's too small. But if you're going to be using like wall, like bird netting and stuff, we've seen that does have some limited effectiveness, especially on a shorter tree where you could access, talking a very tall tree, that's obviously not a very good, and it's also unsightly method. But we have seen some effectiveness with that. That's all, but I'll be here for questions and.
Get to questions at the end.
Yeah.
All right.
I can.
Okay. Thank you so much. And I know that there are some really good questions being asked in the chat and in person. I just want to, before we get to questions, real quick, I want to bring up a community leader from Honolulu, John Watts. Joe Watts.
No, John Watts, my uncle.
Story. I mean, it's yet to be seen whether or when they get their population under control, but he has really mobilized his community in such an inspiring way, and I want to see this modeled all across the island. So thank you so much for being here, and talk to us a little bit about what you did in Kailua.
First off, I wanted to say thank you for bringing attention to this, for all of the folks that have been making sure that this is something they're talking about with their neighbors, they're talking about with their communities, and for everyone who can find a way to talk about it in your job, thank you for that as well. I'm going to tell you guys a couple of things that are like a little spooky and then a little bit happy. So we went from having nothing inside of our valley in Waihe'e to getting one positive sample to running around and doing the limiting and having 22 acres of little fire ants. So that, just because there's not something on the map in your area doesn't necessarily mean that there's not little fire ants. It might mean that nobody is testing. If you're like, oh no, that's spooky, and you're out in the world and you're like, oh, this is. At the 7-Eleven on your way home, you can get a musubi, a peanut butter, a chopstick, and a bag of Ziploc bags, and you can go out and actually do something about it, right? And so of all the invasive species threats that we have here in Hawaii right now, little fire ants are some of the most tangible things that you as a person living in Hawaii can step up and do. So get your peanut butter, get your sticks, get your tests, send them to our very nice friends who love looking at ants, and we can go ahead and take those next steps. The treatments are not particularly difficult. You can treat a house as quickly as you can walk around it. So what it really takes doing, what the really big task in front of us is just making sure that everyone is aware of the situation so that we can treat the houses. We can handle this. Well, Oahu can handle this as long as we come together. And you guys stop by. It doesn't have to be 7-Eleven. They don't pay me. You can go anywhere. But the peanut butter, the chopsticks, you guys can do this. It's really helpful. And then if you do find the little fire ants, there's a lot of good folks who are going to help you with that steps.
So that concludes the presentations, and we are moving on to question and answers. I will get to your question right away, but there was one question I want to address really quick online. The question was, they want to buy a potted plant from a nursery in Waimanalo for the holidays. They want to know which nurseries are infested so that they can avoid those nurseries. I will tell you that what I learned from Senator Keohokalele's amazing informational briefing with the Department of Agriculture is that list of bad actors is not published, It will soon be available when they do, as part of their investigation process, they have to have a court order to enter the property. That court order will be public. But the main point here that I want to emphasize is it doesn't matter which ones are infested or not. It's up to us. I'm working on a bill to require best practices standards for preventing the spread of invasive species through nursery plant sales. But really, we wouldn't need that bill if every single one of us, when we go shopping for soil or for plants, if we ask the retailer, what are you doing to prevent the spread of little fire ants and coconut rhinoceros beetle and poppy frog? Are you testing? Are you quarantining? Are you treating your plants? Because as we move forward, eventually, you know, they might all have, and that doesn't mean we should stop shopping there. That means we need to hold them accountable for their best practices and treatments. Thank you. Okay, my dear, if you could come up and ask your question.
Oh, okay,
And maybe just say your name.
okay.
Love your Maui Strong shirt. Mahalo. All right, welcome. Camera's right here.
Okay.
Speak very loud.
Hi, I'm Ruth Hanlon, and I wondered if composting is a problem, like having a compost pile outside, does that attract little fire ants and other critters?
Excellent question. Department of Agriculture, come right on up.
Yeah, so, composting is done at the higher temperatures, actually won't kill everything. For the homeowner, generally, it's quite hard to get to the temperature, so obviously checking your compost bin, routinely for, you know, CRB and things like that is the best method. I think in terms of it in attracting, it's probably far more attractive to CRB than it is to LFA. LFA are quite opportunistic. They will, like, any nice, cool, damp spot that's undisturbed, they'll make house. They don't discriminate in terms of where to go. You know, underneath the concrete, right over here, there's a hole, they'll make a nest. They don't really care. So yeah, not leaving it is probably the worst thing. If you're maintaining it actively, it's very low risk. There's no risk. There's nothing with no risk. It is quite.
Excellent question, because composting is such an important part of reducing our waste footprint on this island. Thank you. We're gonna go back and forth, one question online, one question in person.
So the next question is, the biggest question I have is, how do organic farmers eradicate or protect their coconut trees from coconut rhinoceros beetles? My favorite farmer in Waimanalo has been getting them.
Excellent question. Do you want to take that too?
Yeah, so like I said earlier, one of the biggest challenges with CRB is that there really aren't good treatment methods. And again, you know, exclusion could work, but again, it's very labor and cost expensive. Yeah, that's one of the biggest challenges with CRB. There really isn't a good, a very good, I guess, traditional method. There's been like anecdotal reports of like in the Philippines where they put sand in the grounds and works are not scientifically. And then there is a virus in other parts of the world that does keep CRB in check. The strain or the biotech that we have in place is somebody immune to that. So there is a possibility of biocontrol down the future for CRB. And I think long term, that's probably going to be, like, also for LFA, probably going to be, you know, that solution that's going to really be necessary to really do some, unless we can find a that's going to be
evergreen pyrethrum is an organic spray, but it's made out of chrysanthemum.
Yeah, so pyrethroids can kill, but
not the best.
Yeah, they're very limited effectiveness, from my understanding.
Highly photodegrades quickly.
Yeah,
but on contact,
so it works. You're probably gonna have, like, so again, you depending on how effective.
Fantastic. Okay, question from the audience.
Oh,
Adam, do you want to come up?
It's not a question, it's sharing my experience of the fire ants.
Yeah, come on up. Speak loudly.
All right.
Right over here.
Yeah, so I just wanted to share, like Devin was saying, that the fire ants on the Big Island, because I've been on Big Island for years now, they basically, like, if they're open, they'll spread over your property as much food as they can find, they'll just keep spreading and spreading. And, what do I want to say? He said that they burn for an hour and a half, and that's like when that's how long it feels like a piece. But they oftentimes, sometimes they'll get bit, it burns for, really about 15 minutes, sometimes it's 7 hours, it burns for something like 6-7 hours. And then, next day for like maybe half people, or it'll feel like a mosquito bite. All of them will be like kind of burning, pretty itchy. And yeah, so there's that. So a lot of people like me have been feeling like mosquito bites for a few days afterwards. And pretty much all of our neighbors' cats, no matter if they're really good cat owners or not so good cat owners, pretty much all of them are going blind. So because they'll just come into the food dishes, and we have put so many measures to prevent the ants from coming into the dishes. If you put a food dish anywhere in your house, that'll come in. You have to find special containers for eggs and all kinds of things. And dogs are going blind as well. And almost everyone has one capital virus.
For sharing your story. That is absolutely horrific. Can you imagine how that feels if an infant gets bit, or a small dog or a cat? So a lot of people think that because the Big Island has had them for so long, they might think, oh, they're doing fine over there, but really they're not. This is daily torment, and we can avoid that if we start right now by testing your home and talking to your neighbors about it. Do we have another question from online?
Yes, the next question is, what about all the empty properties on the beach? So I'm assuming this is regarding the fire ant.
Excellent question. Does anybody want to go for that? Is you testing any topic?
This is regulatory.
We are not currently testing.
This is Dexter Kishida, also from Press.
No, deputy to the chair.
Deputy to the chair. My
So
apologies.
currently, we're not actively testing any vacant homes, but if there is a known adjacent infestation, or the property is, then we can seek the authority to enter the property. So please notify 643 PASS if you know something adjacent to the property, and we can agree to report it.
And I'm not sure if the question, it just said empty properties like the beach, so I'm not sure if they were referring to like vacant houses on the beach or the beach itself. So if there's, are any of the departments testing like beaches and parks?
No, the community has, I think, and Lonnie kind of, a few others, right?
So we, community members again are the real heroes. Tested and found in Lanikai, the beach access at Makanu, and the stretch along there of about 10 houses is infested in the foliage. And the fear there, that's what the crews are stored. So the ants can travel to that offshore islands, which are bird sanctuaries. And as soon as Hawaii Ant Lab was notified, they verified it, they came in, and now they're treating that area. So we do have the resources when community members who are astute and paying attention let the government know, then the government can come in and do the part that they do. So it's that partnership.
Yeah, I absolutely would recommend testing wherever you go. If you go to a park on a regular basis, if you go to a beach on a regular basis. I personally found while I was dining at a restaurant, a little red ant fell on my shoulder. I grabbed some tape, I stuck it in, and I sent it in to you wonderful people at the Oahu Invasive Species Committee. And that one was not a little fire ant, it was actually a lookalike species. But yeah, absolutely, anybody can send in a test from anywhere, so, and the government just does not have enough resources as much as we wish we could. I mean, there's so many other things we have to deal with too, like homelessness, like affordable housing, like the fires on Maui. And so we really need every single human to test wherever they can and test often. I don't know if once a month is too often. What do you think?
At the very least, once a year. If you can do it twice a year, that's even better. And anytime you get new stuff onto your property.
All right, anybody in person have a question? If not, I know we have a couple online. Okay, in the green, come right on up.
My question is, hi, I'm Michael, I'm from Kailua.
Hold on.
I'm in Kailua, I don't want to change my. But, where can we find like, stuff that we can use to maybe kill some of these things or at least prevent them from multiplying?
Go ahead, Chrissy.
Is there a
Important
list
question.
on this stoptheant.org?
No, there's not, but I'm gonna give you a name right now. If you need a pen, here's one.
Thank you.
One of the easy, so if you are confirmed to have fire ants, and it could be the tropical ones or it could be the little fire ants, make sure that the officials know because we'll need to treat your trees. But if you need immediate relief, you can start using AMDRO, AMDRO, and they're just granules. And you can just follow the label, but it's scattered around, and then the ants can come and feed on it. That will take care of the infestation. We absolutely have to follow up with the tree treatments, and it follows a very regimented schedule where we treat 8 times over the course of a whole year. Because you want each and every one of those colonies to send out workers to look for food. So 8 times you go back and you treat it, and then we'll do one big survey, and if it's gone, then woo-hoo, then we'll survey your property just a few times the next year, well, the next 3 years, to make sure we got all of them. And then once you pass that, then you can throw a party in your yard.
Where do you get the Amazon from?
Oh, you can get it from like Home Depot, not a employee of Home Depot, but a regular hardware store school.
Amazon.
AMDRO, City Mill.
I do want to emphasize though that it's really important that you also need to contact the Hawaii Ant Lab, visit stoptheant.org or call 643-PEST and report that infestation. Because just because you're feeling it, your neighbors probably have it too. They need to be tested. Their houses need to be tested. And you might put the Amdro in your house and it might get rid of them in your house, but you still got them in your trees. And they're still infesting your neighbor's plants. And they might get into a river down in the backyard. So it's really important that actually you call the experts. They will treat your house for free. They will do the regimented, the strict regimen, year-long treatment process. There's no other pest you can get that for where they will come and treat your house and get rid of that pest for you for free. And that's how important this invasive species is. So again, if you find any, do not try to treat it on your own. Call 643-PEST or visit stoptheant.org. I saw one more hand in person coming up. Welcome.
Thanks. My name is John Raccoon. I'm on the Oahu Neighborhood Board, and I also northern end of Oahu. My biggest concern right now is that we're kind of addressing this in many ways as a state issue, state level, State Department issue, other than Esther Kiaina being here from the county. What I'd like to see, because this is an Oahu issue for us right now, we need to address this at a county level. What does the mayor have to say about this? What does the city council have to say about this? Every Parks Department employee should go through training to learn about testing. You're gonna go out there and you're gonna mow Kailua Park, or you're gonna mow park in Kailua or wherever. Before you mow, you go put on your peanut butter, and you do the tests, and you collect them, and you know where to deposit them. We have to do this on a systemic level. I totally agree the community has to stand up and be counted, but every county worker needs to also know we need to have county level policies to address this. The other thing I want to just bring up is that we're moving a lot material around this. Tree trimmers, people like mulch. Mulch is gold for farmers. So we have to know where those tree trimmings are coming from or going to. The tree trimming companies, Aspen, Trees of Hawaii, whatever, they also need to be engaged. So I think we need to graduate the discussion to include those in our county that are doing that kind of work and engage them in conversations.
Fantastic. And I will, Councilmember Esther Aina has done, has been involved in invasive species work on an unprecedented level, I would say, as far as council members go, really taking a stand on the budget, and trying to get desperately needed funds to the Oahu Invasive Species Committee, who is an Oahu-based organization. You're absolutely right. I think the mayor and the parks and the administration need to get involved. Esther, did you want to say a few words?
Yes. First of all, I wanted to thank John for bringing this up. Chair Kimiona Kane from the Waimanalo Neighborhood Board several months ago, I don't know if it was July or August, I think it was in July, actually asked each of us as a Waimanalo Neighborhood Board what we were doing. And as someone who was very involved in invasive species at the federal and state level, I'll be honest with you, since I didn't know what the city was doing, I was flat-footed. And since that time, I won't name names, but I had a difficult time securing money for the city's agricultural grant program. If you're not aware, $3 million was allocated. It's already been awarded, and we have $8 million in the pipeline. I do know that when I started talking about invasive species, because other council members saw that we were having all these town halls, there was concern over me, and that I seem to be taking on state kuleana. And as someone who's been in policy for 30 plus years of my life, I think that it's all of our kuleana. So having said that, I do know that this year's budget is going to be rough because the state and county is looking at hazard pay for both county and state employees. We are looking at upwards of $200 million that's going to cost the city and county of Honolulu. We're gonna pull back money from ARPA, and then we're also gonna look at next year's budget. Now, why am I saying this? One area that I'm helping immediately is the Oahu Invasive Species Committee, who's here tonight. They need a base yard. They're going to be getting 5 to 8 new employees in 2024, and they need help. And so I actually had multiple conversations tonight because I did find conducive property in Kahului Regional Park. I need the approval of the mayor and the director of Parks and Rec. And I think what I guess I'd like to do is, number one, acknowledge that we need to do more. I will be introducing a resolution which would encourage the city and county to adhere to best practices, and maybe all of you guys can help me. Where I need all of your help is to also contact council members beyond the Windward side because I need help. The good news is I think I do have respect for my colleagues, and so almost most bills or resolutions that I pass have a high likelihood of passage, but I still need support, including from the mayor. So again, thank you to 2 individuals who happen to also be in this room to hold me accountable, but I need help with my other colleagues in the mayor. Thank you.
We're going back and forth, so I'd like to take a question from Zoom.
Yeah, so there's a question here, and I don't have the exact wording, I've lost it, but it was whether the blind lists are permanent or temporary, and also how does it affect babies and children's?
Yeah, so the ant stings, what we think is going on is that the animals are getting so many stings in their eyes that they are opening the eye up to wounds. And the infection is what actually makes them blind, and it is permanent. There's no recovery for those eyes. We don't see it in human babies because they cry, and we come and we pick them up, and if we see ants on them, we pick them off and we make sure there's no more ants. But animals aren't so good at articulating sometimes.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay, I took 2 from the room, so I'm gonna take 2 from Zoom, and then I promise I'll get to you next. Oh, that's okay.
Yeah.
That's okay.
Sorry about that.
That's okay.
So Fred Ralston is my name at one level, and totally appreciate the officials we had here. I don't think any of us could ever have possibly understood what's going on or the significance of things and the clear explanations. And I think that without having been here, I don't see how anybody else outside of this group is going to remember anything that we talked about here. And kind of hitchhiking on what John said, I'll probably remember 50% of this tomorrow. I might remember who to talk to about a certain subject. I think that we're at the point of needing task force with unified command in this type of action. And this is actually working on another island at the fire issue, and we see the very same scenario there. We gotta have somebody in charge. And that's what unified command does. We have a whole bunch of departmental commands going on here, but we can't remember all. We can't remember there's 5 different organizations. You got to talk to this guy for this guy for that, and then you know, especially if I try to explain to my neighbors, I got to give them in 30 seconds what they have to do. So if we had one phone number to call, we have one task force for maybe all 3 of them, CRB, ANTS, and Koki, all of them, a task force that has a single person that is the person we see, and a phone number to call, email to send to, and then all of you in the organizations that are connected can connect at your level, and we don't have to worry about making that connection. You can make it for us. So this goes back to what Jared said. Hey, we've exceeded the ability of government to do this job the way government's organized. So we may have to stick in a new form of organization. And I nominate Kimi Onakane. Command works, joint command doesn't. Task force is what the measure of unified command.
Wonderful, thank you. Certainly we're talking about.
Wait, can you do something? The reason why that's kind of important, especially if it's a nonprofit organization, is for funding purposes. And that's primarily from private funders and including the Department of Defense and other federal funders. They will fund a nonprofit organization. And so we have a lot of nonprofits and state agencies in here, but a newly created nonprofit that is community-based would be well received. And that line, and DOD has a lot of money right now with the refuge program. They already gave money to the Department of Land and Natural Resources, but I do know that they want to spread the aloha. And it could be more Hawaii's.
Hello, council member. One. All right, next question from online, and hopefully we're wrapping up the questions soon so we can pick up our test kit that we laid out.
So the question is, are there any orgs or task force that we can volunteer on?
Okay, perfect. I think that question came from Lori, right?
Yes.
If you're looking for ways that you can help out, please reach out to me and I will help coordinate you with kind of like a what do you call it when you did a survey, right? Representative Martin did a survey recently in Lanikai. I'm sure all over the Windward side and all over Oahu, we're going to be working on community surveys. So I guess if everybody just reaches out to me for that, I will connect you with the action that's taking place in your neighborhood. And in response to your question about the one number to call, we kind of have the Department of Agriculture is coordinating all those queries. So 643 Pest works for all coconut rhinoceros beetles, little fire ants, coqui frogs, and actually any invasive species. So 808-643 PEST, P-E-S-T. And they'll connect you with the rating.
But I add something to that. There's also an online reporting, 643pest.org. So you can call or you can text. If you have a photo and you wanted to upload that, they can take a look at it. If you're wondering whether it's a coconut rhinoceros beetle larvae or oriental flower beetle larvae, that's the way to go. It's hard to tell Jonathan what it is you're seeing, so we can use 643 pest.
Can you guys recommend that PBS have a town hall on invasive species? You know how they normally bring various stakeholders?
I believe there's one planned for January.
Fantastic.
Yes.
We're working on PBS insights. Yeah, just want to make sure. Excellent. All right, we're looking for maybe one more question from in person, one more question online. I see nothing in the room. Anything online?
So this is for CBR. What if there's already a full-on infestation, 6 weeks plus on an organic farm? What are the treatments that can be done?
Oh, I think that was already asked. That was the chrysanthemum based.
Yeah, this is evergreen.
CRD evergreen
Oh.
is the organic pesticide to use for that. Any last questions?
I just thought,
Come on up. Okay.
so I thought of a few more things to share that may be relevant to urging people to help with this issue and put on task force. Like, one of them is you can't really you can, but you take food outside to have picnics with your family. You can't really just sit there for a long time, have food next to you. You can't bring food into your bed and just eat while you watch a movie in bed. You can go to the beach sometimes, sometimes within 15 minutes, sometimes it takes an hour and a half, but you have to come to your house and get on your towel. Sometimes not. You can hang out all day and they won't fill up, but it's hit or miss. And the other thing they were sharing earlier, that they nest anywhere, and that's really true. She was saying they can nest indoors as well. And we had an experience where up in my guest room, I had extra clothing shelves, and I went to go move all the clothes off, and they had nested in all the clothes, like in between each of the items of clothing. And I was like, where are they coming from? Because we didn't know they were in our house. And they had nested underneath the whole carpet in that room. So yeah, that was going up. And I don't know what they were eating because we never had food in the back room, but that's where they were living.
And for the people who are wondering what they can do to volunteer, the single best thing you can do right now is go tell 10 friends. Tell them they need to test their properties and why it's so important, and tell them to tell 10 more friends. I saw one more question from Joe. Come on in. And then we're going to show the results of our test kit.
Aloha. This is kind of a pointed question, but I appreciate that the best thing people can do for this holiday season is to be testing the plants that they're purchasing. But it's not a consumer kuleana to ask restaurants what their food safety practices are. And so I think that I'm wondering what the difference is for nursery businesses that would put that responsibility of safety testing on the consumer. So that might be an existential question, but that's a thing that I think we should.
Excellent question, and actually, at Senator Keo'ololi's excellent informational briefing, he brought in the Department of Consumer and Commerce, DCCA, and they testified about how lawsuits are being discussed right now. These bad actor nurseries that are knowingly selling infested plants will be held liable for their actions, and it can be really expensive. So it's in their best interest to test and do those best practices. And it's in our best interest to ask them what they're doing. When is the last time you tested? Do you have an active infestation? If you do, what are you doing about it? So consumer protection, we all need to take an active role.
I appreciate that. And if people online are like, I feel like there should be more, just call everybody. It's so fun.
Absolutely. Okay. If there's no other questions, I'm gonna bring Chrissy up to talk about the results of our test and what to do when you get them.
Okay, you did great, actually. You found some really anti areas.
Oh wow, there are ants on those?
They are all big-headed ants. And so you don't have little fire ants directly in this area. You can feel safe for like the next 5 minutes.
Wow.
Yes.
Good job, guys.
Though there were a few sticks that did not have ants on it because it was perched up on top of the grass. So a couple of clues: you want to put them, if possible, in connection with the ground. Ants kind of feel their way to the food. So if you give them a clear path to the food, the easier it is for you to find the ants and actually put them in the bag. True to form, as we were picking them up, if we didn't have the bag ready, the ants would fall off. You did mostly good with trying not to coat your sticks with peanut butter, but you can see, I'm just gonna pass this around. That's how messy it gets. It is so hard to identify them if you put too much peanut butter on it. So otherwise, you all get an A today.
Amazing. So if anybody at home, you actually don't need a test kit. All you need is some peanut butter or mayonnaise, put it on a chopstick or any kind of stick, and then put it in a Ziploc bag and mail it to the address listed on the screen, Oahu Invasive Species Committee 743 Ulukahiki Street in Kailua. And so we have envelopes here. They've got stamps on them. Or if you need an envelope mailed to you, you can go to stoptheant.org, request a free test kit to be mailed to you. And contact me if you have any questions or anything. I'll put my contact information in the chat. Thank you everybody for coming and for joining us online. Apologies for the technical difficulties at the beginning, but I think it worked out pretty well. Thank you.